Hello and welcome to the Bookshelf, a podcast series brought to you by the Institute of South Asian Studies, ISAS, at the National University of Singapore. I am Amit Ranjan, Research Fellow at ISAS, and I will be your host for today's episode. Today, we are delighted to have Professor Mujibur Rehman, author of a remarkable book, Shikwa-e-Hind, The Political Future of Indian Muslims. We will be discussing the book. Thanks, Professor Rahman, for joining us for this book discussion. My first question is, how do you analyze Muslims' position in the Hindutva dominated politics? When I say Hindutva, I don't mean only the BJP, others also, the way the politics in India taking shape.
Yeah. There are many more organizations who have similar ideologies and who are pursuing similar agendas, which is basically a very majoritarian politics, which does not acknowledge the legitimate rights of minorities as legitimate members of society. And well, the conditions is this, the things are increasingly moving from bad to worse. Uh, uh, and there has been a lot of formulations regarding this for a very long period of time. As you know, this is a very, very old movement, at least goes back to 100 years or so, since 1920s. So India is in the middle of an ideological power struggle. And now the Hindutva politics has become quite hegemonic. And so in my book, I try to explain this because what we are witnessing is this: almost every aspect of Muslim life is subjected to scrutiny. What they eat, how they dress, what is the situation of masjid, whether there was a temple before that, there's this mandir masjid problem. Azan is a problem, and because there is azan apparently causes great deal of noise pollution. Namaz is a problem. You can't offer namaz in public places because namaz are supposed to be offered only in a designated mosque, not outside. So therefore, even if the place is vacant, you can't do that. Then and there are other issues like love jihad, triple talaq, and all of that. On the top of it, then the loyalty question, whether Muslims are loyal to India or Pakistan, whether they clap for Pakistan cricket team or not, and all that stuff about of it. So overall, when one looks at it, there is a whole gamut of issues around which Muslim life is kind of challenged, and that has given a great deal of pain and suffering, inflicted a great deal of pain and suffering to Muslims, and it has been reflected in lynching and bulldozer justice and all that stuff about of it. And so there is a remarkable shift from the so-called secular politics to the present-day politics, where every aspect of Muslim identity is being questioned. The streets are named, Muslim names are changed, and the Muslims cities or towns named after Muslims are also changed. And so there is a massive renaming going on all over the country, particularly in the BJP ruled states and all of it. And one does not see the similar thing happening, say, towns or cities or roads named after British people, for instance. But whereas in case of Muslims, there is always, in every other day, one hears that some name of a railway station is changed or name of a city is changed, and all of that about of it. So overall, it's a very, very depressing situation. And in some instances, there are legal fight, for instance, citizenship question, or for that matter, in some cases of the Mandir Masjid issues, matter has gone to court. Not necessarily mean that the relief has been particularly very satisfactory. For instance, the walk-off property debate recently went to the court, and there was a judgment a couple of days ago regarding walk-off property. So it's overall a very, very day-to-day, challenge that Muslims are facing, all walks of life.
How this everyday communalism is affecting the plural character of the Indian society, and do you think that the institutions have also they have their role in this Uh,
Yeah. This is more than communalism, actually, because I wrote a book some time back, almost 10 years ago, called The Communalism in Post-Colonial India, where I made the argument that communalism in India had changed. Communalism that we knew about in 1940s and 50s and the communalism today are quite different because the role of political parties have changed. The role of social media and media in general has changed. Of course, the role of the state has also changed. So therefore, it will be difficult to say that, if one describes it more as everyday communalism, which in any case always existed in India, which is if there is a Muslim, say for instance, you don't share the water or you don't sit next to him in a restaurant or something like that, about of it on halal food and all of it. Those things were always there, so those Muslims were accustomed to negotiating with it. But today what has happened is this: the communalism is no longer seen as communalism. The communalism has become nationalism, right? The forces who were once identified as communalists, today they are the nationalists. So therefore, there is a significant, and nationalism, the term is very dignified, and therefore there is not much of a resistance to it. Communalism is a very pejorative term. So therefore, there was always some kind of a reaction against communalism. So what we are coming across is this, that there is this Hindu nationalism, which is primarily was once described as Hindu communalism or fundamentalism, has become a dominant working ideology of a society. And that has led to a lot of issues, say making Muslim lives difficult in terms of say finding an accommodation or finding a job, or celebrating festivals and things like that about it. Say, for instance, doing business. So in Uttar Pradesh, for instance, you have Kanwariya, Kanwariya Yatras, where Hindu people walk a long distance as part of religion ritual about of it. So there are these Muslim shopkeepers who would often sell their goods. They are told that they can't sell their goods and they can't buy things from them, or they have to put their name in front of it so that the Kanwarias should figure it out that whether they're Muslims or Hindus, whether the food is halal or not, the food is clean or not, things like that about it. So it has a tremendous amount of ramification, not just in terms of cultural dimensions of life, but also the political economy of Muslim life. So a lot of people are losing jobs and finding it difficult. Say, for instance, the ban on cow slaughter had a tremendous amount of impact on Muslim economy, or the economy of Muslim lives in various BJP ruled states, particularly in Uttar Pradesh and Maharashtra. A lot of people for generations were engaged in these professions, and government took the decision to ban it without exploring any alternative professions for these people or providing them any opportunities to start some other profession. So they were one fine morning find themselves jobless, penniless, and homeless, and workless, and all of that about of it. So there is a tremendous amount. A lot of these things are not adequately recorded or reported or adequately researched, because there are a lot of challenges even doing research on such subjects these days. So India is going through a huge transformation from the point of view of communal relations.
yeah. Uh, you have also talked in your book about the differences within the Muslim community, especially social, regional, and political differences. How they are divided in themselves, how the community is divided.
Well, Muslim community is a very old community, right? It goes back thousands of years. And obviously, over the years, there has been a lot of evolution. And those evolution of the community also has led to differences within the community. And that has happened to all societies and all religious communities. Muslims are not the only ones. The Christians have gone through similar changes, Protestant and Catholic and all of that. Hindus have also gone through similar changes. So Muslims have also gone through similar changes. There are various sectarian differences like Shias and Sunnis and Ahmadiyyas and all of that. And nowadays there are a lot of discussions called Pasmanda Muslims, like Muslims who come from Indian origin and Hindu origin are called the Pasmanda Muslims in India. and all of that about of it. So there are a great deal of differences that is going on about of it. But the Hindutva ideologues do not recognize those internal differences. For them, a Muslim is a Muslim, right? So, so regardless of the differences, regardless whether you are a Shia or a Sunni or Ahmadiyya, you are a target as a Muslim because you are perceived as Pakistani, you are perceived as a Pakistan loyalist, or you are perceived as anti-national, or you are perceived as Bangladeshi refugee. So the heterogeneity of Muslim community, as you know, in my book, I have a separate chapter altogether about Muslims in South. And, so Muslims is not a homogeneous community. There are distinct differences. And even those differences has political repercussions. For instance, in South, the Ajodhya movement did not really had much traction. South, the partition did not have much traction. The Pakistan movement, a separate movement, did not have much traction. So as a result of which, the politics in the South was quite different, which is considered to be one of the reasons why BJP has not been able to expand its footprint in South. It took a while for it to move into Karnataka, but beyond Karnataka, it is still struggling, though it is making serious and concerted effort to find its feet in various parts of Kerala or Tamil Nadu or Telangana or Andhra Pradesh and all of that about of it. But the fact is that uh, Muslims of South politically are very different. They are far more assimilated. There is a higher degree of these things. And more importantly, the way that Islam spread in South was quite different. It was not associated with the state power. It's largely the Sufi tradition. And so a lot of Muslims, those who embraced Islam, coming from Hindu religion, they continue to retain many practices of Hindu society and Hindu identity. And so that has made the othering very difficult, as a result of which one comes across that there is a sharp difference between Muslims in South and Muslims in North. And so there are some sharp differences. But when it comes down to Hindutva politics, Hindutva ideologues, they look at Muslims as a monolith.
Yeah. Uh, there is also a chapter number 6 in your book titled "The Unending Debate on Muslim Backwardness in India."
Yes, right.
If you look at such a community, came out with a report on 6 7.
Mm.
So it revealed that the uh, debate by the so-called secular party, and showed that nothing much has happened. Especially, they have not done even the Communist Party, Bengal, they have done nothing more than paying only lip service to the Muslim development. So, can you
Mhm.
elaborate on this?
Yeah, the Muslim backwardness debate is a very old debate. There is this argument that Muslims are a minority and they face discrimination because they are the others in the society, and that's the reason why they are backward. Now, since this conversation is very old, like it goes back to early part of 20th century, there were discussions about it after Sipai Mutiny, because in those days the lingua franca for the state was Parsi, and suddenly it changed and it moved to English, and Muslims were reluctant to get into English education. So they fell behind and all of that about it. So in that particular chapter, I try to highlight that it is true that Muslims were seen as backward after Sipai Mutiny, during anti-colonial time in the 30s and 40s, and even after India's independence, and then current time under the domination of Hindutva politics. But the context of each of them are very different. It's important to capture the context, what led to Muslim backwardness in different eras about of it. Then one can have a nuanced understanding of Muslim backwardness. Muslims are not backward because they want to be backward. Muslims are not backward because they are some God-given quality to stay backward. The point is this, that in almost all walks of life in India, whether art, music, theater, sports, business, politics, writing, all of it, you'll come across there are always handful of Muslims who are very well known, and and they have set a very high standard, whether it is say Muhammad Riaz, who's a cricketer, to Sania Mirza, to Sarukh Khan, to APJ Kalam, to Ajim Premji, to so you'll come across or Bismillah Khan, so you'll come across or Zakir Hussain. So you'll come across there are Muslims everywhere signing about it. Now the point is this that but a large bulk of Indian Muslims are very poor. And there are two reasons for it. First is that there are bulk of Indians are also very poor. And that's because there has been a serious problem in modern India, particularly with respect to generation of employment, as a result of which large number of people never managed to find employment. Only those people who had network were able to do very well. So Indian economy is also very network driven. So as a result of which you come across ethnic domination of people. There are too many Bengalis who are journalists, for instance, in media or in academia or things like that about it. And so likewise, South Indians are these things about it, because these are all the network-driven professions. So therefore, I draw that distinction and try to explain to that how in Bollywood, for instance, Muslims are doing quite well. The Khan bloc, for instance, and they are quite dominant and they're minting money, right? It's because that they have been able to build a network, and through that network, they are able to carry on the business, both the domestic one and the global one. Not that they don't face challenges. They do face a lot of challenges. They do face discriminations and all of that, but they have been able to dominate it because they have built a very good network. Average Indian Muslims do not have that kind of an ability to build the network. So as a result of which they have fallen behind, and they, the backwardness that we're talking about is basically economic backwardness. Muslims are not backward because they eat biryani or they eat kebab, or they wear kurta and all of that about of it, or topi or about it. They are backward because they are not able to earn adequate income so that they have enough surplus to lead a good life, buy a nice house or nice car, or have enough savings for a good health or for daughter's marriage, or travel to different parts of India. So a large chunk of Muslims, particularly working class Muslims, are also trying to move out of it, and they go to Middle East, for instance, and particularly, let's say, in Kerala, in other parts of India. So they are able to generate and make some money about it. But in education, they have all fallen behind. So in my that particular chapter, I try to discuss in detail the different dimensions of this backwardness. There is backwardness because there is discrimination, and which is also a very important fact. And there are scholars like Christoph Jaffelot and others who have shown that how Muslim higher education has fallen down after 2014, for instance. The enrollment number has fallen down. Since you mentioned about Sachar report, it's very interesting. The Sachar report was published in 2006 when Dr. Manmohan Singh was the Prime Minister of India. Right? India got globalized or liberalized in 1991 under Dr. Manmohan Singh, who was then the Finance Minister of India. So 15 years after India's liberalization, Muslim conditions have not changed very much. Muslims remain very backward. Now, there was a report prior to that in 1983 published called Gopal Singh Panel Report. And so the socioeconomic conditions of Gopal Singh Panel Report and the socioeconomic conditions in Sachar report, they were almost identical, which is essentially Muslims are underrepresented in most sectors of economy, and they are overrepresented in places like jails and others about it. So they're all very, very terrifying figures about it. So what we can argue safely is this: neither Nehruvian model of development, which dominated 60s, 70s, and 80s, nor the economic reform which started in 91, 92 onwards, neither of them has worked. Now, after Sachar report, there was an attempt to correct and fix some of this. One of the things the Sachar report said is this, that Muslim families are interested to provide education to their children, but there is a massive dropout of the children in the school. The reason for that the parents were not in a position to afford education of the children. So therefore, Sachar report recommended for scholarships, for instance. And so that the students would continue to have education in the schools and colleges about it. Now, some of the scholarships are taken out by the present government. There was a very famous scholarship called Maulana Azad Scholarship, which was given to university students, has been taken out by the present government, for instance. So the reason the given is this, that, well, no, everybody is equal, so why should Muslims be given separate scholarships? But then the Muslims are fallen behind, right? And so therefore, the reason why the scholarship recommendation came, because Muslims have fallen behind and they have to be brought as equal, which is the reason why it's given. It is not because that somebody wants to be over generous to Muslims. Even if they're a minority community, but they have got equal rights, and the state has an obligation to look after them, which is the reason why this thing's about it. One of the arguments that I make in my book is that what is unfolding in India, when we see all these things in various aspects of Muslim lives being targeted, is that a de-Islamization process is on. I call that de-Islamization. This is very different from a conventional framework of analysis, where Muslim politics and Muslim rights and Muslim communities' life is perceived more as minority rights. And that is how large number of scholars all over the world and many organizations also look at it, because Muslims are a minority, so therefore it's a Muslim. I try to draw that distinction between the two. And I'd like to take a minute to explain this. In minority rights, like Sachar Committee report is a classic example of minority rights violation, because here is a government which takes a step to come out with a report because it considers it is an obligation to understand what's wrong with the Muslim community. Okay, then the committee recommends certain things and the government makes an effort to implement some of those recommendations in order to uplift it, because state looks at an obligations. But when in case of de-Islamization and the ideological struggle, when the community is not perceived as a citizen or citizen with equal rights, then the state does not see that it has any obligation towards the community. Because the larger majoritarian argument is that we are very nice people. For thousands of years, we have been very, very nice to this community. That is the reason why this community has grown, has lived in this country, and there are so many mosques and all of it. So you don't have to ask for any right. Okay. And that's the reason why BJP, for instance, does not field Muslims as MPs and MLAs, because it does not want Muslims to have a political voice, right? And so I often give this example of Waqf debate. We had this big debate that took place in Waqf, for instance, and there were only 24 member of parliaments. If there were 60, 70 or 80 Muslim member of parliaments, the Waqf debate would have been far more stronger, and there would have been a far bigger voice for the on behalf of the community about it. Mobilization would have been far bigger and all of that a part of it. So representation is very important of every community. The argument that we have been very nice for thousands of years, and therefore you don't have to really represent yourself because we can look after you, is very similar to the argument saying that my mother is a woman, my sister is a woman, my wife is a woman, so I know woman's problem, and woman need not have to represent herself. Right? And so, but there is a very famous American slogan which says that taxation without representation is colonialism. Every community has a right to represent themselves. The Dalits have a right to represent themselves. Muslims have a right to represent themselves. Hindus have rights to represent themselves. Hindus of South India have the right to represent themselves. Northeast has the right to represent themselves. So representation is very central to the democratic process. And when the representation is weakened, then the backwardness question also gradually gets weakened, because nobody talks about it. There is no voice, or the voice is very muted. And as a result of which, whenever there is a Muslim suffering and all of it, one does not come across adequate amount of noise in the right platform to receive that, to present, to have some sort of an attention from the government to make an intervention.
Within the community, within the Muslim community, or any community, the most affected population is the women, and Muslim women has to navigate both majoritarianism and then radical and cleric. So how you look at their situation in the present India?
You see, there are two things. One is that there is a women problem, and that women problem is there all over the world. You see, you cannot say that the women of this community and that community have these things about of it. So take for example Sabarimala case in Kerala. So that's also represents some kind of a woman problem about of it, right? And we have a massive problem of dowry in our Indian society, afflicted both Hindus and Muslims, and but that's generally not talked about of it. So there is a women problem all over. And there is this pay scale in United States also. You have, you know, pay differences between women and men and all of that about it. So we have a general problem of inequality towards these things about it. Muslim women obviously have been confronting issues concerning hijab, concerning particularly in the Indian context, the Sahabano debate and all of that, which has something to do with the Islamic patriarchy. Now, my problem is this, that Muslim community has internal problems. I'm not saying that Muslim community does not have any internal problems. All communities have got internal problems. Hindu community has also got tremendous amount of internal problems. The caste is a big thing about of it in the Hindu community. When you start using the term like Sanatana and the rest of the things, you try to set aside the caste question or try to overlook the caste question. But the caste question is a very, very important reality of Hindu society, which is a direct source of inequality and discrimination, and it is widely established, right? And likewise, there are problems in Christian community and other communities about it. Now, so far as the Muslim women are concerned, obviously, the constitution offers the protection to the all citizens, which include Muslim women. And as a result of which, some of the progressive measures have taken. Triple Talaq abolition is one such measure driven by the court and all of that about of it. So there is a fight going on among Muslim community, among what is called the Islamic feminists and Muslim feminists. So there are global voices, there are also Indian voices, there are various organizations like Bharatiya Muslim Mahila Andolan and others who are working on all of that part of it. So that problem is upward. Now, what Hindu majoritarianism has done, that it has not only, but there is also a class factor. Muslim women who are born to privileged classes, say Sania Mirza, for instance, say a lot of these Bollywood actresses and all of it about of it. They don't face much of a discrimination. They lead a very there's a class dimension to the debate about it. So since in Muslim community there is a vast chunk of population who are working class, so that has in fact contributed significantly for the sufferings of the Muslim women and about of it. So that fight is going on within the community about it. And but what majoritarianism has done is this: it has brought another challenge to them, right? So when the fight was just one front against Islamic patriarchy, now it is Islamic patriarchy and majoritarianism. So it's now multi-front. So for Muslim women, the fight is now economic, cultural, and also political. So there are different dimensions to it. So Muslim women today is fighting a multi-front battle. That's how I would like to look at it.
Means a competitive communal patriarchy.
Yes.
Maybe say that competitive communal patriarchy, both sides, one side.
Yeah. There is patriarchy. Yes.
Mediterranean and then
Yeah.
again.
Yeah.
My final question is: how do you see the future of Muslims in India?
Yeah, and the Muslim future is very bleak. And what we're going to see is this more and more violence against Muslim community. And there is a widespread violence all over the country, and most of them are not reported. Say, for instance, the other day, somewhere in Maharashtra, there was a young boy who was sitting with another girl, and apparently some people suspected that he is a case of love jihad. So he was thrashed and bitten and brutally murdered about of it. So you have violence of that kind. I want to clarify about my book. My book is about political future of Indian Muslims. And the argument that I try to make is this, that Muslim community has got, the future of Muslim community has been, written about forever. So there are many scholars who wrote about Muslim future. But the future of Muslim community has different dimensions. It has political future, it has economic future, it has cultural future. So Sachar committee, for instance, addresses the issue of economic future, right? And whenever there is a concern and debate or discussions with respect to, say, Urdu language or Veil and all of that, those are the questions concerning cultural future of the Muslim community or all of that about it. I have specifically focused on the political future, and I have argued that it is the political future which is at stake unless Muslim community ensures that it has the political future, then the other future cannot be addressed. What do I mean by political future? What I mean by is this, that, then I go back and talk about three important political moments of Muslim history. Going back to Sipai Mutiny, which is the first political moment, 1947, the second political moment, and today's period, the third political moment. So in 1857, Muslims were kind of lost because the Muslim rule had gone forever. So then Muslim community struggled to come to terms with the new reality and accepted as his fate as the subject under colonial regime. Now, in 1947, despite partitions, Muslims are given the equal rights, right? Theoretically, a Muslim can be the president and prime minister of India. Muslims have become the presidents of India multiple times and all of that about it. So they had equal rights. They can take any job and all of that about it. Now, I argue that that particular promise in the constitution is now unsettled, right? We are living in an age in which a person of Indian origin by name Rishi Sunak recently served as the Prime Minister of Britain. We have Anita Anand in Canada, who is serving as the Foreign Minister of Canada. We had Kamala Harris, a person of Indian origin, again, who aspired to become the this thing's about of it. In India, Muslims have been living for thousands of years, and they are not able to represent themselves as member of parliament, as MLA, and they are not there in the cabinet of modern India. In the Indian cabinet, there is no Muslim. Not just in the national cabinet, in most of the BJP governments, there are no Muslim who are serving as ministers. That's because there are no Muslims as MLAs. In the last parliamentary election, BJP only offered one ticket to Muslim, which is in Kerala, and they knew it very well that the candidate was going to lose. So that has been the approach about it. So I argue that this is a deliberate strategy in order to mute and reduce and diminish Muslim political voice about it, and that is what political future by means, because you are not perceived as politically equal. So you remain outside the space of power structure, outside the space of governance structure. All right, about it. So there is some kind of a charity is expected by the ruling elites that they would give it to you. So you should wait for the time when they will think about some charity for you. You do not have rights. Your rights are taken away. So that's how I describe the political future, that you are no longer perceived as politically equal. And those who follow the political developments of India, the selective manner, for instance, bulldozer justice has been applied. The cases of lynching are dealt with. It is quite apparent that a lot of Muslims feel that they have been targeted. In fact, the Punjab and Haryana court, they said, well, it is a case of, in the context of no violence, they did make an observation saying that it looks like it's a case of ethnic cleansing, that the entire community has been targeted, bulldozed overnight, because some miscreants or some people who threw stones at a procession, and therefore the entire neighborhood had to be demolished. And that is precisely what happened about it. So increasingly, there is a perception that there is one law for Muslims and there is another law for everybody else, and all of it about it. So that runs very deep. So therefore, the future of Indian Muslims, broadly speaking, is very bleak. Recently, some of the Muslim students who were activists arrested during the CAA movement, they are denied bail, and that debate is going on about of it. They were there for 5 years or so, and they are still languishing. There is no hearing and all of that about it. But most of them are Muslims. So therefore, the political future of Muslims is very bleak. So if the political future is Muslims is very bleak, then obviously the economic future is also going to be very bleak, and cultural future is also going to be very bleak about it. So what I suspect is going to happen is that there is going to be more and more violence. And the nature of violence against Muslim and Hindu-Muslim violence has a long history again. It did not start with Ajodhya movement. It was there even during partition time and before and all of that. But the nature of violence has already changed. Invariably, it's the Muslims who are perceived to be the perpetrators, even if they happen to be the victims. The other day I was in a discussion in which former Raw Chief S. Daulat told me that the Muslims have always been the prominent victims of violence. But I think nowadays they are only presented as perpetrators. And in the old days, whenever there is a riot, there is a particular procedure that was followed to deal with the riot. For instance, there will be an attempt to set up a peace committee. There will be an attempt to have some kind of a judicial commission report and all of that, and measures will be taken and all of that about it. There is hardly any judicial commission report that is taking place. The only case, the last judicial commission report was the Muzaffarnagar riot, which took place in 2013. And recently there is a judicial commission report on Sambal. And all the three members happen to be from the majority community. Not a single Muslim member was there, whereas the Sambal case is a question of Mandir and Masjid. So there should have been at least a Muslim representation in that committee. So we didn't see that about of it. So there is a significant difference in the state's approach towards violence against Muslims, and that makes the whole question of future far more dangerous and depressing.
You talked about a political representation, but you look at there is presence in the institution, like police or a military or paramilitary or any other institution. So that also affects, uh, uh, you know, that also affects them and also affects the nature of the Hindu-Muslim relation.
That's right. Yeah, the bureaucracy, particularly high bureaucracy, Muslims have always underrepresented. That was the finding in Gopal Singh panel report in 1983. That was the finding of Sachar report in 2006, and that has been the finding of subsequent reports about it. But what has changed is this, that in present days, even if there are Muslim officers, they are not assigned responsible tasks under the majoritarian ideology. They were asked to do trivial tasks in the office. And so that any question concerning community is not, properly addressed about of it. My interview with some of the police officers in different states during my research, I've noticed that they say कि हमारा हाथ बंधा हुआ है. I vividly remember a very, very tragic conversation, a very police officer telling me कि हमारा साहब हमारा तो हाथ बंधा हुआ है, बस हम तो ऑफिस आते हैं और ऑफिस से जाते हैं. Our hands are tied. I just come to office and go to office. So a lot of people were not even allowed to function in many parts of the government, and so even if they wanted to do something for the community, they are not in a position to do it. On the other hand, the majoritarian ideology is kind of that's precisely what I try to say in my book called Saffron System. There is this argument, oh, Indian constitution is secular, so nothing would happen to anybody because the constitution is secular. So my argument is this, that when a majoritarian ideology takes over the state, then it would internally transform the entire organizational structure, attitudes of officers, recruitment patterns, and everything about of it, and the behavioral patterns in such a manner that even if you have a word called secularism in the constitution, it becomes inconsequential, because in reality it is the majoritarian ideology that would dictate the behavior and responses and policies about it. So that can manifest in different ways. For instance, if it's a flood and there is a massive case of flood, and if you are a very communal bureaucracy, and then you only address the problems of where you have majority community, and you skip the minority community and Muslim community neighborhoods and all of that about of it. You don't bother about it. You say, oh no, you fetch for yourself about of it. So if there is a fire accident, for instance, things like that about of it, or if so things like that. But it has been quite well established by research that most Muslim neighborhoods often lack basic facilities. Those things are there in the Sachar report itself. For instance, banking facilities. It is always a challenge for Muslims to seek loans. and to start any business and all of that. So most Muslims often end up doing very, very small businesses, such as like tailors, mechanics, and all of that about it. So this is what Sachar report has described as most Muslims are self-employed. But this self-employment is not the same as self-employment of Ambani or Adani or Shahrukh Khan. Yeah, you're not making too much of money. You are basically making 2,000 rupees a month as a tailor. And so you are where you are. You are just not on the street and begging in the street about of it. So that's what it is about of it.
You mean that there is a trust deficit between the communal groups,
Yeah,
and
it's
why
massive. It's massive. It's widening. It's widening. There's a massive campaign going on against the Muslim community at different levels about it. For instance, one of our minister called Nitin Gadkari made a statement, "अरे वो क्या दो चार आदमी तो IPL खेलते हैं." The Muslim community's contribution to Indian economy and society is enormous. As I said, that they have excelled in almost every walks of life of this country, and they may not be visible everywhere, but to dismiss them that they have no contribution and all of it. Look at music, art and music, so there is a widespread presence of Muslim artists and all of that about of it. So there is an attempt to present Muslim community is a liability for the country, that this is a community which does not have modern skills, does not want to have modern skills. It's a very violent, this things community and all of that. And uh, they are into all kinds of regressive habits and regressive practices. And they are mostly into producing a lot of children and overpopulating India and all of it, and making India an Islamic nation and this and that about of it, and then terrorism and all of that about of it. So there is a massive campaign that is going on about of it, and unfortunately, one comes across rhetorics from top political leaders also, which are very similar to this kind of negative stereotypes about Muslim community.
thank you, Professor Rahman, for discussing your book with us.
Most most
Uh,
welcome.
you are listening to the bookshelf. To learn more about our work, please visit us at our official website. You can also get updates from our social media platforms. Thank you, sir.
Most welcome.